But the first one I want to go into more detail is called the cosmological argument. And it goes something like this. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Scientists for a long time thought the universe was eternal, but actually Albert Einstein proved that that was not true, and that irritated him. He didn't want it to be true that the universe actually had a beginning, because that opened the door for a possible being like God to have done that. But nonetheless, Albert Einstein created the general theory of relativity, and he did conclude that the universe had a beginning, and that was actually confirmed years later with the Hubble telescope, where you could actually see that the universe was expanding. The second law of thermodynamics also shows us that the usable amount of energy is actually winding down, so if the universe was eternal, surely the amount of energy would have been expired by now, because it's been going on for eternity. Now, when you think about the cosmological argument from a philosophical point of view, there are two important things to point out to show that the universe cannot be eternal. Number one is the idea that there can't be an infinite amount of past events. Because if you think about it, if events had been going on from eternity, from the past, we would never have arrived at today. Because there would always have been a previous event before today. We never would have gotten to now. And yet, here we are, so we must have had a starting point to get to where we are now. The other philosophical point is that we can't have an infinite amount of things. Yes, we can talk about the idea of infinity in terms of mathematics, things that are not concrete. But when you're talking about physical stuff, when you're talking about matter, like the idea of having an infinite amount of baseball cards, or an infinite coin collection. Yes, you might be able to have a really big coin collection, or a really big collection of baseball cards. But an infinite coin collection means there's no end to it. It just keeps going on and on and on. And that's just not possible. William Lane Craig thinks of the idea of what's called the Hilbert's Hotel. And the idea there is it's a hotel with an infinite amount of rooms and an infinite amount of guests. And then one more guest wants to come into this hotel. Now all the rooms are occupied because there's an infinite amount of guests, but yet, if you have an infinite amount of rooms, all you have to do is have one guest move from the first room to the next, the person in the second room move to the next room, and so on, and then the new person can move in. But when you started, there were no rooms available because all the rooms were taken, because there were an infinite amount of guests. So the idea behind this is the idea that Hilbert's Hotel is absurd when you talk about the idea of infinity in terms of things. And the universe is a thing, so it cannot be eternal. So the philosophical idea behind the cosmological argument, along with some very sound scientific arguments, make for a very good first argument that a universe that had a beginning implies a beginner.